When I say focus on yourself, I don't mean become self-centered. That's not what this is about at all. What I mean is directing your energy inward toward personal development rather than outward toward impressing others. There's a profound difference. See, most people spend their lives focused on everyone else. They're worried about what others think. They're concerned about how they appear. They're constantly looking sideways to see how they measure up. And in doing so, they scatter their energy to the winds. They become like leaves blown about by every breeze of opinion or trend. But successful people, truly successful people, have learned the art of healthy selfishness. They've recognized that the most valuable asset they have, the only true asset they have, is themselves. Their minds, their skills, their character, their discipline, their focus. I learned early on that if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. Not much at all. So focusing on yourself means reclaiming ownership of your life's direction. It means having the courage to say, this is my life, and I am responsible for its quality. Now let's talk about this idea of staying silent. In a world that celebrates noise, that rewards the loudest voice in the room, silence has become a forgotten power. Everyone's busy announcing their goals, sharing their journey, seeking validation and adulation. Social media has amplified this tendency 1,000-fold. But there's something magical that happens when you keep your ambitions close to your chest. I remember reading about the psychological studies on goal achievement. They found something fascinating. The more you talk about your goals, the less likely you are to achieve them. Isn't that interesting? When you tell someone your goals, you receive a psychological reward, a little hit of satisfaction just from the telling that can actually diminish your drive to pursue the real achievement. The brain gets confused. It thinks, well, I've already gotten some satisfaction from this goal by talking about it, so maybe I don't need to work as hard to achieve it. Silence, on the other hand, builds pressure. It creates intensity. When you don't release the energy of your ambition through words, it gets channeled into action. And action, my friends, is what transforms lives, not talk. I always tell people, be a student, not a follower. What does that mean? It means learn from everyone, but walk your own path. And often that path is best walked quietly, with determination, with focus, with discipline. Now, I want to share with you 7 disciplines of focusing on yourself while staying silent. These aren't just ideas, they're actionable principles that can revolutionize your life if you apply them consistently. The first discipline is self-audit. You must regularly and ruthlessly evaluate where you are. Most people never stop to truly assess their current position. They have vague notions of dissatisfaction, but they never sit down in silence and take honest stock. Where are you financially? How's your health, your relationships, your skills, your mental state? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about establishing a clear starting point. As I often say, you can't change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. And to change direction, you first need to know exactly where you stand. The discipline of self-audit requires silence. It requires turning off the noise, sitting with yourself and asking tough questions. Am I where I want to be? If not, why not? What patterns have led me here? What small changes could set me on a better path? These questions, asked in honest silence, can change everything. The second discipline is goal setting without announcement. Most people have it backward. They announce their goals to the world before they've taken a single meaningful step toward achieving them. They mistake talking for action. But the master of personal focus knows better. They set specific, measurable, time-bound goals, write them down, and this is the key. They shut up about them. They don't seek validation. They don't post about their journey on day one. They simply get to work. I once knew a woman who decided to start a business while her peers were busy creating clever social media handles and telling everyone about their entrepreneurial ambitions. She quietly secured her first 3 clients. By the time people realized she had a business, she was already profitable. That's the power of silent goal setting. It channels energy into results rather than announcements. The third discipline is daily private victory. This is something I've emphasized throughout my career, and it becomes even more powerful when practiced in silence. The daily private victory means winning the battles no one sees, getting up when your alarm first goes off, reading for self-improvement before checking your phone, exercising discipline in your diet, managing your emotions when challenged, practicing gratitude even amid difficulties. These silent personal victories may seem small, but they compound over time into an unshakable foundation for success. Remember, what you do in private ultimately manifests in public. The disciplines you practice when no one is watching create the person everyone will see. But here's the key: you don't need to document these private victories for social validation. You don't need to tell the world you woke up at a.m. The satisfaction comes from knowing you're becoming the person you aspire to be, not from others knowing it. The fourth discipline is study without showmanship. In our information economy, knowledge truly is power. But there's a difference between acquiring knowledge for application and acquiring it for display. The focused individual reads not so they can quote impressive passages at dinner parties, but so they can apply insights to their life and work. They take courses not for certificates to hang on their wall, but for skills they can put into practice. I always say that formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. But that self-education is most powerful when pursued quietly, consistently, with genuine curiosity rather than a desire to impress. The truly educated person doesn't need to announce their learning. It becomes evident in their thoughts, decisions, and results. The fifth discipline is work without complaint. There's something remarkable about the person who simply puts their head down and does the work. No drama, no complaints about how hard everything is, no seeking of sympathy or special recognition. Just consistent, focused effort directed toward meaningful goals. I have observed that the amount of success you achieve is directly proportional to how much value you create and inversely proportional to how much recognition you seek for creating it. The focused individual understands this equation. They're not working for applause, they're working for results. They're not concerned with who gets the credit, they're concerned with getting the job done. And in that quiet focus on value creation rather than validation, they become indispensable. The sixth discipline is recovery in solitude. Even the most driven among us need periods of rest and rejuvenation. But there's a difference between recovery and distraction, between solitude and social escapism. The master of personal focus knows how to be alone, how to use periods of solitude for deep reflection, creative thinking, and genuine rest. In our connected world, the ability to be comfortably alone with your thoughts has become increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. The person who can disconnect from the noise, who can sit in silence and be present with themselves, has an enormous advantage. They're not dependent on constant external stimulation. They're not afraid of their own thoughts. They've developed the capacity for deep work and deep rest, both of which happen best in silence. And finally, the seventh discipline is evaluation without ego. At regular intervals, you must step back and honestly assess your progress. Are you moving forward? Are your strategies working? What needs to be adjusted? This evaluation isn't about judging your worth as a person, it's about measuring the effectiveness of your approach. The focused individual can look at their results objectively, without attaching their identity to temporary failures or successes. They can make clear-eyed assessments and course corrections without the need to justify, excuse, or explain to others. This private, ego-free evaluation keeps them on track when others might get derailed by defensiveness or discouragement. Now, let me tell you about something that happens when you practice these disciplines consistently. Something magical, something transformative. You begin to develop what I call a quiet confidence, a deep, unshakable belief in your ability to achieve your goals that doesn't require external validation. This quiet confidence is different from arrogance. Arrogance is loud, insecure, demanding of attention. Quiet confidence is calm, secure, content to be overlooked. Arrogance needs to announce itself. Quiet confidence lets results speak for themselves. And believe me, results always speak louder than words. You know, I've been teaching success principles for decades, and I've noticed an interesting pattern. The people who talk the most about what they're going to do usually accomplish the least. And the people who talk the least about their ambitions often achieve the most. Isn't that fascinating? It's almost as if the universe rewards those who are humble enough to work in silence. There's a story I love about a young man who wanted to learn martial arts. He went to a renowned master and asked to be taught. The master agreed, but gave him an unusual first assignment: For 1 year, the master said, you may not tell anyone that you are studying with me. You may not demonstrate any techniques to your friends. You may not wear anything that identifies you as my student. You may simply come learn and practice in private. The young man was confused but agreed. For a full year, he learned and practiced in silence while his friends bragged about their various pursuits. It was difficult at times. He wanted recognition. He wanted to show off the new skills he was developing. But he honored his agreement. At the end of the year, the master called him in and said, congratulations, you have passed the first and most important test. You have learned that true mastery begins with overcoming the ego's need for recognition. Now your real training can begin. That story contains a profound truth about the path to excellence in any field. The need for external validation is often our greatest limitation. When we focus on ourselves on becoming better rather than being seen as better, and when we have the discipline to stay silent about our journey, we remove one of the biggest obstacles to achievement. Now, some people might wonder, Jim, isn't this approach a bit too individualistic? Don't we need community? Don't we need support? That's an excellent question. And the answer is yes, absolutely. We do need others. Success is never achieved entirely alone. But here's the distinction. There's a difference between strategic collaboration and validation seeking. The focused individual builds meaningful relationships with mentors, peers, and team members who contribute to their growth and to whom they contribute a return. But these relationships aren't about showing off or seeking approval. They're about mutual value creation. Think of it this way. The most effective collaborations happen between people who are each focusing on becoming their best selves. When you commit to personal excellence and responsibility, you actually become more valuable to others, not less. You bring more to your relationships, not less. Your silence isn't about disconnection. It's about bringing substance rather than noise to your connections. I want to address another question that might be on your mind. Jim, in today's world, isn't some level of self-promotion necessary? Don't I need to market myself to get my name out there? That's a fair concern. And yes, in many fields, visibility matters. But here's what I've observed. The best self-promotion is no self-promotion at all. It's doing work so good that others can't help but talk about it. When you focus intensely on creating exceptional value, when you commit to excellence in your chosen field, you create a vacuum that pulls opportunity toward you. You don't have to chase attention, attention chases you. You don't have to announce your value becomes self-evident. I am reminded of a principle from nature. The lion doesn't have to roar to prove it's a lion. There's something incredibly powerful about quiet competence, about letting your work speak for itself. And in a world of increasing noise, that quiet competence stands out more than ever. Let me share with you 5 strategies for maintaining your focus and silence, even when the world seems determined to pull you into distraction and declaration. First, create a morning sanctuary. The first hour of your day sets the tone for everything that follows. Most people immediately plug into the noise, email, social media, news, the opinions, demands of others. But the focused individual protects their morning hours like a sanctuary. They use this time for self-directed thought, for planning, for personal development activities that align with their deepest goals. They don't let the world rush in before they've had a chance to center themselves in their own priorities. I recommend creating a morning ritual that might include reading, meditation, exercise, journaling, or reviewing your goals. Whatever components you choose, the key is that this time belongs to you. It's not reactive, it's intentional. And it happens in silence, free from the clamor of others' expectations. Second, practice regular digital detox. The devices that connect us to the world also connect us to unprecedented levels of distraction and social comparison. The focused individual is intentional about disconnecting. They have regular periods, perhaps evenings, weekends, or even specific weeks, when they step away from the digital noise. They're not afraid of missing out because they recognize that the most important things rarely happen on screens. During these digital detox periods, you reconnect with yourself. You rediscover the clarity that comes with silence. You remember what it's like to think your own thoughts rather than reacting to the thoughts of others. And in that reconnection, you often find the insights and energy needed for your next level of achievement. Third, develop the discipline of delayed response. In our instant gratification culture, we've lost the art of pause. Someone sends a message and we feel compelled to reply immediately. Someone asks a question and we rush to answer. Someone offers an opportunity and we jump without reflection. The focused individual knows the power of pause. They're not a slave to others' timelines. They give themselves space to consider, to evaluate, to decide what warrants their energy and attention. This doesn't mean being unresponsive, it means being responsibly responsive rather than reactively responsive. When you receive a message, ask yourself, does this require an immediate answer? Would a more thoughtful response in a few hours or tomorrow serve better? When faced with an opportunity, ask, does this align with my core priorities? Or is it a distraction disguised as an opportunity? This discipline of pause creates space for wisdom that reactive living never allows. Fourth, curate your circle of influence. Jim Rohn, that's me, famously said that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This principle becomes even more critical when you're committed to focus and silence. Some people in your life may be threatened by your new approach. They may be uncomfortable with your refusal to engage in gossip, comparison, or validation seeking. They may try to pull you back into old patterns. The focused individual is intentional about who has access to their time and energy. They seek out relationships with others who are also committed to substance over noise, to achievement over announcement. They limit exposure to chronic complainers, validation seekers, and energy drainers. This doesn't mean cutting people out callously. It simply means being strategic about who influences your thinking and habits. Sometimes loving someone means keeping some distance so their patterns don't become your patterns. And fifth, commit to meaningful documentation rather than performative sharing. There's value in recording your journey and keeping track of lessons learned and progress made. But there's a difference between private documentation for personal growth and public sharing for validation. The focused individual keeps journals, tracks metrics, and records insights, but primarily for their own reflection and improvement. They're not concerned with crafting the perfect caption or filtering the perfect image for social consumption. Their documentation serves their growth, not their image. If and when they do share their journey, it's with intention and substance. It's to provide genuine value to others, not to receive applause. It's to contribute, not to consume attention. And often this sharing happens only after significant achievement, not during the messy, uncertain process of getting there. Now, let me tell you what happens when you commit to focusing on yourself and staying silent over the long term. The changes are profound and often unexpected. First, your signal-to-noise ratio improves dramatically. When you're not constantly expressing half-baked ideas or seeking validation for every small step, your mind becomes clearer. You begin to distinguish between genuine insights and passing reactions. Your thinking deepens because it's not interrupted by the constant need to broadcast. Second, your actions gain momentum. Energy that was once dispersed through talk is now channeled into tangible progress. You find yourself accomplishing in weeks what might have taken months when you were caught in the cycle of announcement and validation seeking. Third, you develop extraordinary resilience. When your sense of progress and worth comes from within rather than from external feedback, you become much less vulnerable to criticism and setbacks. You're no longer derailed by a negative comment or lack of recognition because you weren't dependent on praise to begin with. Fourth, you become more observant. When you're not busy talking or crafting how you'll present yourself, you can actually see what's happening around you. You notice opportunities others miss. You see patterns others overlook. You hear what people are really saying, not just what you want to hear or what you're planning to say next. And fifth, perhaps most valuable of all, you become a person of substance in a world increasingly dominated by surface. In an age where many people are building personal brands without building personal capacity, your commitment to depth stands out. Your words carry weight because they're not cheapened by overuse. Your accomplishments speak volumes because they weren't prematurely diminished by premature announcement. Let me share with you a principle that has guided me throughout my career. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your philosophy. Your philosophy, your fundamental beliefs about how life works and how success is achieved shapes every decision you make and every action you take. The philosophy we're exploring today, focus on yourself and stay silent, runs counter to much of our current culture. We live in an age of self-promotion, of carefully curated online personas. Look at me and like my post. Choosing a different path requires courage and conviction. It requires faith that substance ultimately trumps spectacle, that meaningful achievement outlasts momentary attention. But the rewards of this counterintuitive approach are extraordinary. When you focus on yourself, on becoming the best version of you rather than impressing others with who you already are, you tap into an inexhaustible source of motivation. You're no longer dependent on external recognition to feel you're making progress. You know you're making progress because you can see the tangible changes in your capabilities, your character, your results. And when you stay silent about your journey, when you choose privacy over publicity, substance over spectacle, you create space for deep work and authentic growth. You free yourself from the energy drain of managing perceptions. You liberate yourself from the emotional roller coaster of seeking validation. You discover the peace that comes with knowing that your worth isn't determined by others' awareness of it. I want to tell you about something I've observed repeatedly over my many years of studying success. There's a pattern I call the silent achiever phenomenon. It works like this. While one person is talking about all they're going to do, another person is quietly doing it. 5 years later, the talker is often still talking while the doer has transformed their life. I remember two young men who attended my seminar back in the late 90s. They sat next to each other, both enthusiastic, both taking notes. After the event, one of them started a blog about personal development. He posted daily about the changes he was making, the books he was reading, the success principles he was applying. He gained a following. People praised his insights and dedication. The other young man took a different approach. He went home, reviewed his notes, identified 3 key areas for improvement in his life, and got to work. No announcements, no public documentation of his journey, just focused, consistent action. 10 years later, I ran into both of them at another event. The blogger had become somewhat known in personal development circles. He had a modest following and made some income from his content. He'd experienced some positive changes in his life, certainly. But the silent achiever, he had transformed completely. He'd built a successful business, become physically fit, developed deep relationships, and attained financial independence. The difference in their results was striking. Same seminar, same information, drastically different approaches to application, and drastically different outcomes. This isn't to say that sharing your journey is always counterproductive. There can be value in teaching others what you're learning. But there's a profound difference between sharing to contribute and sharing to be validated. The former comes from abundance, the latter comes from lack. And people can sense the difference, even if they can't articulate it. The silent achiever phenomenon reminds us of an uncomfortable truth. Talking about doing something can give us the same psychological reward as actually doing it, without requiring the effort of doing it. Each time we announce our intentions and receive positive feedback, our brain gets a hit of dopamine. We feel good. We feel like we've made progress, but that feeling can be deceptive if it's not backed by consistent action. Silence protects us from this psychological trap. When we keep our goals and processes private, we don't receive that premature reward. The only satisfaction available to us comes from actual achievement, and that's a much more reliable path to lasting success. Now, I want to be clear about something. Discipline of silence doesn't mean you never share your achievements or insights. It means you're strategic and intentional about when and why you share. It means you share from a place of contribution rather than validation seeking. It means you share after you've done the work, not as a substitute for doing the work. Think of it this way: a tree grows silently for years before it bears fruit. It doesn't announce each stage of its growth. It doesn't seek applause for every inch of height gained or root extended. It simply focuses on the process of becoming. And when it finally bears fruit, it does so not to be recognized, but because fruit bearing is the natural outcome of its growth. That's how focused achievement works. You grow in silence. You develop your capabilities without fanfare. You strengthen your roots, extend your reach, deepen your understanding, all quietly, consistently, with patience and faith in the process. And when you eventually bear fruit, when you achieve meaningful results, you do so not to be applauded, but because achievement is the natural outcome of your focused growth. There's something else that happens when you embrace this approach to success. You develop what psychologists call internal locus of control, the belief that you, rather than external forces, determine your outcomes in life. This mindset is one of the strongest predictors of achievement across all fields. People with an external locus of control believe their lives are primarily determined by forces outside themselves, luck, circumstances, other people's actions. They feel like victims of their situation, constantly reacting to what happens to them rather than creating what happens for them. But people with an internal locus of control, people who focus on themselves and the factors they can influence, experience life very differently. They see challenges as opportunities to grow rather than reasons to complain. They take responsibility for their circumstances rather than blaming others. They focus on solutions rather than problems. This internal locus of control is strengthened by the practice of silence. When you're not constantly seeking external validation or guidance, you're forced to develop your own compass. You learn to trust your judgment, to evaluate your own progress, to motivate yourself from within. This self-reliance becomes a superpower in a world where most people are looking to others to tell them how they're doing and what they should do next. Let me share with you 3 questions I recommend asking yourself regularly as you pursue this path of focused self-development and strategic silence. The first question is, am I running my day or is my day running me? Most people live reactively. They wake up and immediately start responding to the demands of others, emails, messages, news, social media. Before they know it, the day is gone and they've addressed everyone's priorities except their own. The focused individual lives differently. They decide in advance what matters most and protect time for those priorities. They don't check email before they spend time on their most important work. They don't get lost in social media before they've invested in their physical health or personal growth. They run their day doesn't run them. The second question is this moving me toward my goals or away from them? Throughout your day, you'll face countless small decisions: what to read, what to watch, who to talk to, how to spend a free hour. The focused individual evaluates these choices not based on immediate pleasure, but on alignment with long-term objectives. This doesn't mean becoming joyless or mechanical. It simply means being intentional about how you invest your limited resources of time and energy. It means recognizing that each choice either moves you toward the life you want or away from it. There's rarely a neutral option. And the third question is, am I seeking growth or comfort right now? Growth and comfort cannot coexist. Achievement requires stepping beyond what's familiar and safe. The focused individual regularly challenges themselves to choose growth over comfort, to expand their capabilities rather than remain within known limits. This might mean having a difficult conversation instead of avoiding conflict. It might mean tackling a complex problem instead of procrastinating. It might mean investing in learning a new skill instead of relaxing with familiar activities. The consistent choice of growth over comfort, made privately without announcement or applause, is what separates extraordinary achievers from the ordinary. These 3 questions, asked regularly in moments of silent reflection, can keep you aligned with the philosophy we're exploring. They provide a framework for making decisions that support your focused self-development rather than dispersing your energy. Now, I want to address something important. The path we're discussing, focusing on yourself and staying silent, may seem at odds with the idea of service and contribution. After all, many spiritual and philosophical traditions emphasize giving to others rather than focusing on oneself. How do we reconcile these seemingly contradictory approaches? The answer lies in understanding the difference between selfish self-focus and strategic self-focus. Selfish self-focus is about gratifying immediate desires at the expense of others. Strategic self-focus is about developing your capabilities so you can ultimately be of greater service. Think of it this way: when you board an airplane, the flight attendant always instructs that, in case of emergency, you should put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. This isn't selfish, it's strategic. If you pass out from lack of oxygen, you can't help anyone else. The same principle applies to personal development. By focusing on becoming your best self, developing your skills, managing your health, cultivating your character, you increase your capacity to contribute meaningfully to others. Your self-focus isn't an end in itself. It's a means to more effective service. And the discipline of silence, it ensures that your service comes from authentic achievement rather than the appearance of achievement. It ensures that you're contributing substance rather than noise. It ensures that when you do speak, your words carry the weight of lived experience rather than hollow theory. Some of the most impactful people in history have combined intense self-development with strategic silence. They didn't announce their intentions to change the world. They simply worked on becoming the kind of people who could. They didn't seek validation at every step. They sought results. And when they finally did speak or act publicly, their impact was profound precisely because it came from depth rather than desire for attention. As we begin to conclude our time together, I want to leave you with a challenge. For the next 90 days, practice the discipline of focused self-development combined with strategic silence. Don't announce this challenge on social media. Don't tell everyone what you're doing. Simply commit privately and get to work. During these 90 days, spend the first hour of each day on self-directed growth, reading, planning, exercising, meditating, or whatever activities align with your development goals. Set specific targets for improvement in key areas of your life, professional skills, physical health, financial management, relationships, but don't announce these targets to others. At the end of each day, spend 10 minutes in silent reflection evaluating your progress and planning for tomorrow. Reduce your social media consumption by at least 50% and eliminate any competitive or validation-seeking use of these platforms. When you achieve small wins, resist the urge to immediately share them. Instead, document them privately in a journal, savoring the satisfaction of progress for its own sake rather than for external recognition. When you face setbacks, as everyone does, process them privately rather than seeking sympathy. Ask yourself what you can learn, how you can adjust, and how you can use the experience to grow stronger. After 90 days of this practice, you won't need me to tell you its value. You'll see the results for yourself in your productivity, your clarity, your sense of purpose, your emotional stability, and your tangible achievements. The philosophy will have proven itself through your experience of it. And that, my friends, is the ultimate test of any idea, not how good it sounds, but how well it works when applied with discipline and consistency. Let me leave you with this final thought. Success is not something you pursue, it's something you attract by the person you become. When you focus on yourself, on becoming a person of value, capability, and character, and when you have the discipline to do so quietly without seeking constant validation, you set in motion forces that can transform your life. You don't have to announce your journey to the world. You don't have to post about every small step of progress. You don't have to seek external validation for internal growth. You simply have to do the work day after day with focus and faith in the process. And one day you'll look back and realize that while others were talking about the lives they wanted to create, you were silently creating the life you wanted. While others were seeking shortcuts to success, you were building the foundation for lasting achievement. While others were chasing validation, you were accumulating value. That, my friends, is the power of focusing on yourself and staying silent. It's not a strategy for overnight success or viral fame. It's a philosophy for enduring achievement and authentic contribution. It's a path less traveled in our noisy, validation-seeking world. And that's precisely why it offers such extraordinary advantages to those with the wisdom to choose it and the discipline to follow it. So I ask you, will you be one of the rare few who chooses focus over distraction, depth over surface, substance over spectacle? Will you be one of the rare few who understands that the most valuable work often happens outside the spotlight? Will you be one of the rare few who has the courage to grow in silence, trusting that meaningful results will speak louder than any announcement ever could? The choice is yours, and that choice, made privately, implemented consistently, will shape not just what you achieve, but who you become. Choose wisely. Choose focus. Choose silence. And in doing so, choose a path to extraordinary achievement that few will follow, but all will notice. Thank you for your time and attention today. Now, don't just leave inspired, leave determined. Don't just appreciate these ideas, apply them. Remember, in the end, it's not what you know that matters, it's what you do with what you know. Focus on yourself, stay silent, and watch as your life transforms through the power of disciplined private action. The world doesn't need more noise. It doesn't need more announcements of intention. It needs more people who quietly, consistently do the work of becoming their best selves and creating their best contribution. Be one of those people. Starting today, starting now. Remember what I always say, for things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. For things to improve, you have to improve. And that improvement, that personal transformation, happens most powerfully when you focus on yourself and stay silent. Not forever silent, but strategically silent. Silent enough to hear your own thoughts. Silent enough to do deep work. Silent enough to notice opportunities others miss because they're too busy talking. Your life changes the day you make the decision to change it. And sometimes the most powerful decision you can make is to stop announcing and start achieving. To stop seeking validation and start creating value. To stop dispersing your energy and start focusing it. I believe in your capacity to make that decision. I believe in your potential to transform your life through focused self-development and strategic silence. Now it's time for you to believe it too, not just with words, but with committed action. Thank you, and remember, life is not about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. So focus on that creation and let the results speak for themselves.